Hello, and welcome to a video which has changed format since its creation, which was originally going to be me and my brother playing Warhammer Total War 2, because he hasn't got 3 yet, and having a couple of battles, having a bit of a chat. When we did this, it was actually quite fun, but unfortunately our audio, when I came back to listen to it, sounded like shit. So I've had to think about it really hard and do it again. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do a commentary over the top of it, which is easier because I'm dying. I have a very, very bad cold, and I feel like my face is about to fall off. So at some point during this video, it may just end, or I may pause making the video and do it when I'm healthy. I won't do that because that would be too easy. And let's, before I start to whinge and whine, I'm a man, I only do that when people are watching, I'm going to just skip to the first battle, which is High Elves versus Lizard Men. So, men with pointy ears versus creatures with pointed teeth. I wonder who will win that one. So, we enter the battle, the final phases of the setup, tactical layout of the armies. So, the lizard men on one side, who are essentially lizards riding dinosaurs, which to me seems a little bit incestuous, versus the high elves, which does not mean they have been smoking absolutely tons of pot while sniffing shit tons of cocaine. Yes, I was as disappointed as you are to find that out. It looks like the first move the lizard men are going to do is to charge his weaker units straight into the heart of the enemy line, which consists of, there's no other way to put it, an arse ton of chariots and an arse ton of dragons. This, to many, would seem foolhardy, but to the general of the lizard men, he knows that his opponent has no idea how these two units work. Push the advantage while moving his more AT-AT-like dinosaurs into position. It appears the High Elves have taken the bait and are attacking in force the skinks that are the most apparent threat, instead of maneuvering to take on the larger army. The chariots are also standing line and acting as ranged units, which is not their tactical forte. They are supposed to charge in and charge out and use the arrows mainly to suppress or attack from afar later on. Oh, the dragons are now moving. This could get nasty, but no, the skinks will pull back and pull the enemy forces more towards the line infantry far down the hill. But it looks like the dragons are caught up, because surprise, surprise, big bloody dragons way faster than foot infantry. The larger mega dinosaurs have all made it to the field now, distracting 90% of the cavalry and ranged units that are on the field. The dragons now also seem confused and are all attacking individual targets, as in they are all focusing their power on one particular dinosaur. This is a mistake, and they will pay for it later, I assure you. Now rallied skinks are being pushed straight back into battle for some sort of advantage over the grounded dragons. This does seem like a foolhardy tactic, as there is in fact a lot of dragons and chariots still flying around, and as we can see, these dragons are going to make exceptionally light work of these one-bite dinosaurs. As the battle on the hill intensifies, some chariots suicidally heroically charge the main line infantry at the foot of the hill in order to distract and divert away from the chaos which is growing above. Will this seemingly suicidal act have any effect on the sway of battle? Nope, they're all dead and running away. And out of nowhere, a group of elven infantry has emerged. Now this has turned the battlefield on its head, because the Lizardman army is almost fully engaged elsewhere and has very limited ability to respond, only on the rear with a small group of ranged infantry and cavalry, and a small group at the front. But obviously spears and cavalry are very, very badly mixed opponents, because spears skewer horses like cocktails skewer cheese. Now will you excuse me for a moment while my lungs eject themselves from my body? Now that I've rather indignantly pushed my lungs back into my chest, I can see the battle has taken a massive turn in favour of the lizardmen, with all of the elves focusing their attacks at the top of the hill. This means they are getting in each other's way quite heavily, and allowing the lizardmen to mobilise their line infantry and push themselves into better positions. Also, the elves have exposed their lord to 18 tons of ferocity, and in a battle between what is essentially an old man and an 85 billion ton dinosaur, I think I know which one is going to win. And we enter the final phases of the battle, with the elves thoroughly crushed and in full retreat, with the lizardmen pushing hard on their rear, or snapping hard on their tails, or whatever. And there we have it, pyrrhic victory. It was okay as a pyrrhic victory, because we weren't in campaign mode, it was just the battle. If it was in campaign, pyrrhic means you lost a lot of men compared to the army that you had. But because it doesn't matter, I really don't care. The next battle is between the Nausicans and the Dark Elves. Now this is going to be a bit more of a standard battle because as you can see the focus will be on the infantry instead of just hordes of monsters or one or two very strong units. I don't know what the Dark Elves did, I can't remember what Dark Elves used, so I'm just going to say let's just skip to the battle and enjoy what ensues. Yet again we enter the battle at the final moments of the deployment phase, with all the Nausicaan units being pulled into a corner to act as that defensive ridge, knowing that there's not that much that can get behind them. Line infantry at the front, some stronger units on the sides to cover the flanks, with range and some artillery on the rear. And also some ambushing cavalry that's now going to distract a sizable chunk of the Dark Elves units. And some giant bloody mammoths waiting to ambush off to the side. Now they will be used later on, but right now the artillery is opening fire, and it looks like the Nausicaan leader is about to cast a spell on his own units. Because why the hell not? The Dark Elves appear to have chosen a different, more aggressive tactic, which is the infantry have broken off to go into what appear to be flanking positions, and the cavalry are acting as rapid shock troopers, and the harpies attacking the secondary line. This tactic is great, but unfortunately completely unsupported by the other units, so acting individually I can't see it having much success later on in the battle. And as predicted, the harpies have been forced to flee because they've been overwhelmed by superior infantry, magic, and a giant bloody mammoth. This has freed up a nice chunk of infantry to either reform the line or corkscrew around coming from the rear of the cavalry and pin them in place, trapping them between some big-ass spears and their own ruddy great big axes. This heavy blow in the battle is also doubly worse due to the fact that the infantry is still miles away from the main battle and is not there to support or give any form of relief to the cavalry as it flees. This has allowed the Nausicans to reform, refresh, and react to the now fresh assault from the Banshees at their rear. Only one surviving unit of Banshees left, but still, it can cause a lot of damage to that artillery should they be left unchecked. Dark Elf infantry, however, appears to be given one single order, which is get around the back of the Nausicans and mess them up. This is a great idea should it have been performed well. Unfortunately, the Dark Elves have left their lines, left their positions, left their formations, and thus left themselves vulnerable to attacks from every single direction possible. These mammoths, when they reach their target, will and should smash into the rears of all of their sword infantry, who are completely incapable of holding them off. However, there is a glimmer of hope for this daring assault, which is the cavalry has rallied and is charging straight into some spears, so they will instantly be massacred, run away and die. They can hold their nerve, and if they can stay alive long enough, they may just hold up the line long enough for the infantry to have an effect on the other parts of the Nausicaan line. Overwhelm, overpower, overskill. If they can't, well, let's just say a lot of elves are about to meet their maker, which may not be a great thing, being as most of them are demon this and demon that. And call me a pessimist, but demons are more known for giving you, crushings, burnings, scathings, curses, pain, suffering, that sort of thing, over the big, warm, cuddly happiness that you would expect from an afterlife. Now, they fought their best and they did their worst, but the cavalry is now done. It is in full retreat from the line, and I do not think we'll see any of it return to the battle at any point in the near future. This is, of course, terrible news for the infantry, who are fully engaged in combat and getting sandwiched in by an overwhelming number of troops. Like being trapped under that fat drunk friend at a party that you just can't move, and they're weighing down on you until you can't breathe, your chest explodes, and you need to get away and eat. If you need that explaining, think fat drunk friend is lots of infantry with heavily armed spears and axes. Drunk as in everybody's throwing themselves at you and it's quite overwhelming. Chest exploding as in your chest is about to explode, so someone's going to drum an axe through it. And A&E is what is the Warhammer alternative for A&E? Because I don't know what that is. Nausicans slaughter the remaining Dark Elves and celebrate a decisive victory. Only one question remains. Who would win in a fight between Dwarves or Dark Elves? And before we even load the battle screen, I think you can tell by my army lineup, I have no idea how to play as Dwarves. I don't know what they do, I don't know how they work. All I know is that they're sort of Scottish. Some have guns, some have flamethrowers, and that's about it. Oh, they have helicopters, they have those things too. You join this battle with the dwarves preparing for assaults from the front and the rear, because the Dark Elves can do that. They have also got some artillery, some range, and then some light infantry with helicopters in forward positions. However, this has all turned out to be for bollocks, because all of the enemy's infantry is over here. So the dwarves are just going to put their ranged helicopters somewhere slightly out of their range, but inside of their own, and pummel them from there. Does this also mean that the dwarves are going to have to do a really rapid reshuffle of where their units are? Yes, damn straight they are. And do you think they've noticed those units creeping in from the top and the bottom of the map? No, they haven't. And do you think they will pay the price for this massive oversight of something they were fully prepared for and then instantly forgot about? This commentator thinks yes. And as the Dark Elf shock cavalry and ranged units, covered by some flying units, scythe in and cut into the weaker rear units of the dwarven lines, can't help but feel sorry for the dwarves as they throw bottles of burning fluids into their own lines to counter this ambush. As they try to maneuver the burners into a position where they will be effective, you can't help but realise that they are just too slow to react, as their relative speed is similar to continental drift on a cold day, which arguably would speed up the drift, but let's go with the analogy, yeah? And as the chaos and confusion unfolds, burners are opening fire on their own lines in order to repel the attacking Dark Elves, wiping out huge swathes of both of their forces, attacking and defending. This a massive tactical oversight on their part has played right into the hands of the Dark Elves, who are playing their hit and run tactics very, very well. In a rather daring maneuver, the Dark Elves' main forces opted not to engage the dwarves in this disrupted state, instead to hold a sanctuary and safe position against the rocks, instead of engaging in open conflict. This has allowed the dwarves to reposition and reorganize some freed up units to become a new line, to become a new assaulting section, moving artillery, moving range, moving land. Also, their assaulting rear groups, their ambushing groups, seem now to have lost their initial impact as the dwarves have formed up a good counter line in order to repel them, which they are being. Those cavalry units are starting to retreat, those banshee units are starting to waver. Can they recover their initial shock impact and their shock campaign, or is it done for that line and a main battle now has to commence? So, as the main force still stands steadfast and stationary, safely tucked up against those cliffs and mountainsides, you can't help but wonder what the next plan would be, because all the shock troopers, all the cavalry, all the ambushing units are now all but wiped out. There is one group of cavalry still effectively in the battle, and one group of banshees still somewhat in the battle. The only problem is now the dwarves have reformed and are now mobile again, which means they'll be able to counter these two units pretty easily. On top of all this, the dwarven artillery can actually hit them where they are currently stood, so they are going to have to move eventually or risk being bombarded to the point where they are not going to be combat effective. Yes, the banshees there have stopped the cannon fire temporarily, but they will eventually be overwhelmed by the forces there, and they will eventually have to flee, irregardless of if that cavalry stays to support or not. Here's an interesting tactical decision. Here's a helicopter who's run out of ammunition and is prompted to smash its rotor blades into the faces of the horse and Dark Elf thereupon in an effort to have some sort of melee combat. Now, this to me rings bells of stuff like Indiana Jones, when he smashes a Nazi's face into a plane blade. But instead of a plane, you have a helicopter, and instead of Indiana Jones, you have a dwarf, and instead of a Nazi, you have a Dark Elf cavalry unit. It works in my head, okay? Oh, and the Dark Elves moved their lord out to act as a distraction. He's not done anything yet, but he's just sat there, flying, waiting, tying up some dwarven units. And it will probably move at some point. In a tactical move that is long overdue in this battle, the main force has opted to start its advance into the open field, leaving the sanctuary in defensive position at the foot of the mountains. This has forced the dwarves to do yet another repositioning, reorganization, and relining. This has allowed the Dark Elven artillery to become effective for the first time in this battle. It has also forced the dwarves to have to handle these insane sword units that have appeared off to their flank. They may not be battle winners, but they will certainly be a disruption should the battle go on for long enough. As the two main forces begin to collide, we focus in on this section. Will this line of spearmen be able to catch up with those burners, those lethal Byzantine-like flamethrowers that can scythe through most infantry units in a few shots? Luckily, they managed to get away. Unfortunately for the Dark Elves, that does mean they are now pinned and waiting for the slaughter. On the other side of the battlefield, the other group of burners have been engaged in melee combat. This is not something they are supposed to do. They are the flamethrowers. That is what they do. And off to the left of the screen, you can see those flamethrowers being put into massive effect and massive use against them weaker spearmen. Is any wonder now if the dwarves can maneuver quick enough in a solid enough way to fold in on those Dark Elves and stop them getting away and finally finish off any fleeing units before they fully focus on the artillery and the units at the back. In a clever turn in tactic, the Dark Elves have started to do a feint retreat to assault technique, drawing out some units of dwarves from their line, turning around, overwhelming and overpowering them. Unfortunately, the dwarven ranged units can then put all of their range into a crowded group of Dark Elf units, causing massive effect and massive damage. Dark Elves fell back far enough and left the artillery to do a bit more job. This tactic might just work. And in a very bold move, two groups of spearmen are full frontal charging burners who are ready and waiting to burn away an entire unit in one go. I don't think they'll be able to fire a second time, but that first assault will have finished off the morale of both units, who are now engaged from the front and the rear by separate units. And as a second group of burnings go on, you can see just how effective that unit is in correct circumstances. They now can't get out of range of these things quick enough and are just having the worst time of it. That must smell horrific. However, I've heard Dark Elf very tasty. If this group hadn't already done enough to prove their effectiveness, insane swordsmen are charging them head on again, and they will pay the price for it. Those burners, as we have seen, are lethal. Loincloth will not protect you from Greek fire, dwarf fire, whatever fire, that fire. And even if they survive it in any way, shape or form, I doubt they will have any morale left in order to continue unsustained and effective fight. That morale bar has gone. They are flashing and they are fleeing. So let's observe the rest of the battlefield. The artillery is under attack by a dwarven group at the back. The other flanks and other sides of the line are now shattered and in full retreat, and there is the victory. I think it eventually was inevitable. The Dark Elves couldn't capitalize on that shock and ambush that they had early on. If they'd have moved their larger forces a lot earlier, this battle may have swayed in their favor. Now let's see how close this battle really was, shall we? I lost less than a half of my army, and they lost 2/3 of theirs. I don't think that's a close defeat for the Dark Elves. I think that's a crushing defeat. Anyway, that was Warhammer 2. I've been fighting the Battle of the Alamo with my voice and been able to do the commentary. Hopefully I'll get better soon and do another video later. So I'll see you later and bye. And you know what? As a little bit of an extra, just if anybody makes it to the end of this, I'm going to read what it says on the screen, so I never do that. I'm going to say thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe. So often do videos like this, and it's been quite the struggle, this one, so making it to the end has made me quite happy, so thank you for doing that for me. I'm now going to disappear, and I promise next time I do this I might be a bit more enthusiastic and might actually get some better audio in, and maybe even do it with somebody. Who knows? Anyway, it'll be better quality next time, that's for sure. I promise, honest. Anyway, I'm off now. Thanks for watching, please like, subscribe, and see you later. Ta-ra and bye.